At exactly 12:03 in the morning, while I was juggling a cascading multi-state production failure from my terminal in Fort Collins, my phone buzzed with a message that carved my life cleanly in two. "You do not need to come in tomorrow." 7 words. A firing at midnight. Right in the middle of a crisis. Only I understood. I stared at the screen, my breath tightening. A second earlier, I had been on a call with a night supervisor in Cheyenne, talking him through a calibration mismatch. "Hold that sequence for 30 seconds," I had said, trying to buy the system enough time to recover. Now my voice caught. "Jace, I'll call you back." He paused. "Maren, what happened?" "Nothing you can fix," I said, and ended the call before the tremor in my throat gave me away. The machinery alerts kept chiming through my headset, overlapping voices and warnings, but all I could hear were those 7 words marching across my screen. My boss, Conrad Greer, was not a man who sent impulsive messages. A midnight dismissal was not a mistake. It was a decision someone had planned with precision. A second notification lit up beneath the first, a forwarded chain. My name, highlighted. A timestamp from earlier that evening. The subject line read, "Transition Plan Execution." My chest tightened. They had been preparing this while I was stitching their grid back together, timing one facility against another like a surgeon aligning arteries. I steadied myself, forcing air into my lungs. A voice message arrived next, from Celeste Harwood. "Operations will proceed under the new model immediately. All access should be disabled by morning." Her tone was clean, crisp, final. I did not reply. Instead, I sat perfectly still, my hands cold, aware that the system I had held together for 11 years was already sliding toward the edge. My absence was not going to slow the collapse. It was going to expose it. By sunrise, every financial outlet in Colorado would report the same thing: a $5 billion empire had fallen in the dark, and I would be the only one who understood why. I shut the terminal down, knowing the past 11 years were no longer mine to carry, and walked away from the screen that had defined my life as the long night continued to unravel behind me. I stayed awake long after the crisis alerts stopped pinging in my ears, letting the quiet press against me. 11 years of work does not disappear because someone sends 7 words at 12:03 in the morning. But that is exactly what they wanted: clean, silent erasure. When I first joined Iron Veil, I was 28 and still learning the rhythms of the grid. Back then, the night supervisors treated me like a temporary patch. "You will burn out in 6 months," one of them joked. I answered, "Only if you stop calling me when things go wrong." They didn't, and I never burned out. I adapted, for years. I mapped every quirk of every facility, the robotics timing in Utah that drifted by half a second when the line chief swapped shifts, the humidity-sensitive composite molds in Wyoming, the early deliveries from the metals supplier in New Mexico that always required me to adjust the calibration window manually. No algorithm flagged those variables. They were invisible unless you lived inside them long enough to feel their pulse. I remembered sitting across from Conrad Greer once, watching him gesture proudly at a performance chart. "Look at this stability." "Maren," he said, "the system practically runs itself." I had smiled politely. "It runs because the timing stays aligned." He chuckled. "Exactly. Beautiful engineering." He never asked who kept the timing aligned. He never wondered why the same 5 facilities behaved like they shared a single brain. He liked the numbers, not the labor beneath them. Later that night, I called Jason Cheyenne to check a curing sequence. "You always know something before the alerts do," he said. "I just listen," I told him. "Not everyone listens the way you do," he replied. And I heard something almost like concern in his voice. I let the memory settle, the weight of it heavier now that I was no longer part of the grid. 11 years spent stitching threads they never saw, holding a system together that believed it was holding itself. And sometime before dawn, I realized how easy it had been for them to forget the hands behind their stability. Celeste Harwood arrived on a Thursday morning, introduced with the kind of polished confidence that filled the room before she even spoke. Conrad brought her into the operations meeting with a hand on her shoulder, the gesture of a man showing off a new trophy. "This is Celeste," he said. "She will help modernize our coordination framework." She extended her hand toward me. "You must be Maren. I have heard you handle the legacy processes." The way she said legacy felt like a diagnosis. "I handle the cross-facility timing," I replied. Celeste offered a thin smile. "For now." She took the seat beside Conrad, already opening a tablet covered in diagrams and projections. During the meeting, she pointed at one of her slides. "These redundancies slow us down. Automated protocols can manage these touchpoints without needing individual oversight." Her eyes flicked to me. Non-scalable roles become bottlenecks under growth pressure. I leaned forward. "Those redundancies prevent multi-state timing failures. The system adjusts because someone identifies drift before it becomes instability." Celeste folded her hands neatly. "Machines do not drift. Data drifts when humans interfere with it." Jace, sitting across the table, shifted uncomfortably. "With respect, Celeste, Maren has caught issues the dashboards never flagged." She cut him off. "Because the dashboards have not been properly leveraged." She clicked to another slide. "Our goal is to eliminate manual decision layers entirely." Conrad nodded as if she had spoken scripture. After the meeting, I stayed behind to gather my notes. Celeste paused in the doorway. "You seem very attached to your methods." "They keep the grid alive," I said. "Or they keep it stuck in the past." She stepped out without waiting for my reply. Later that evening, while preparing a briefing, I stumbled across a file on the shared drive unsecured, poorly hidden. Operational streamlining. Phase 2. I opened it and saw my own role listed under a heading labeled Planned Sunset Positions. No explanation, no transition plan, just a bullet point under a graph. I closed the file slowly, feeling the shift beneath my feet. The decision had already been set in motion long before anyone bothered to tell me. The night of the firing had begun the same way most crises did, 3 calls at once. 5 supervisors talking over each other, and a timing cascade spreading from Utah to Wyoming before anyone understood why. I was elbow deep in the sequence models, trying to slow the drift long enough for Cheyenne to catch up. When my phone lit up beside the keyboard, it was that same message. "You do not need to come in tomorrow." I whispered it out loud, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something else. They didn't. Jace came through my headset again. "Maren, Salt Lake is asking if they should pause the actuator run. They said they cannot get Denver to respond." My throat tightened. "Tell them to hold. I will get back to you." Before I could mute the line, a new notification popped up. A text from Lucas, one of the junior engineers in Boise. "They think you are holding us back." I stared at his words, my fingers hovering over the screen. Who I typed. His reply came instantly. "Celeste. She told Greer the system will stabilize once your manual interference stops." Manual interference. 11 years of work reduced to 2 words. I closed my eyes as another alarm echoed through the headset. Jace again, voice strained. "Maren, we need the offset values. Everything is slipping." I swallowed hard. "Jace, I cannot give directions tonight. What does that mean?" "It means decisions were made," I said quietly, "not by me." He was silent for a long moment before muttering, "Then they do not know what they just did." I ended the call and set the headset down, letting the room go still around me. Celeste and Conrad had chosen this moment mid-crisis, mid-chaos, because they believed their new system could take over instantly. They had cut the wrong wire, and I knew the break would not be slow. I logged out without ceremony. No warnings, no alarms, no dramatic final command. Just a quiet confirmation window and the soft click of the key. For the first time in 11 years, the grid no longer had my fingerprints on it. Within minutes, alerts began stacking across my muted screen like old ghosts refusing to stay buried. Parameter mismatches, calibration drift, sequence skips. The same issues I had caught hundreds of times before, except now they were accelerating with no one intercepting them. My phone buzzed. A message from Raymond, the facility lead in Flagstaff. Denver is not answering. Did something happen? I stared at his text until it blurred. My fingers hovered above the keyboard, but I did not respond. I was out. That was the choice they made. Another alert pulsed. This one from Cheyenne, the curing window had failed to sync with Salt Lake. Then another Boise's assembly queue rejecting input data. In the past, I would have been juggling 5 calls at once, patching holes before anyone even felt the draft. Tonight, I sat completely still, letting the silence press into my chest. A call from Jace flashed across the screen. I declined it. Then a second time. I declined that too. The third time he left a voicemail that came through shaky and tight. Maren, something is wrong. The offsets are not triggering. It looks like someone deleted the manual backups. We cannot reach Denver. Please tell me you are on your way. I set the phone face down on the table. It buzzed again anyway. A week earlier, Celeste had claimed the automated protocols would eliminate human error. Now, those same protocols were skipping the adjustments that kept 5 states moving in rhythm. A final alert lit up Flagstaff reporting a full stop in their renewable assembly line. The first cracks had opened, and they were spreading faster than anyone inside the system could see. By morning, the grid had torn itself apart. I woke to my phone vibrating non-stop news alerts, missed calls, frantic messages from people who had never contacted me outside scheduled briefings. A breaking report played automatically when I tapped a notification. Multiple facilities across 5 states have halted production. Early estimates suggest losses could reach $5 billion. Another anchor cut in. Federal inspectors have arrived at the Denver headquarters. Leadership has not released a statement. My phone lit up again. This time with a message from Jace. Salt Lake is down. Cheyenne is shutting everything off before the materials warp again. This is bad. Maren. I typed nothing. Within seconds, another message popped up. Raymond from Flagstaff. Celeste is issuing 3 different directives at once. No one knows which one to follow. Then a screenshot came through, a memo stamped the night before. Subject information bottlenecks issue. Maren Calloway has been hoarding operational knowledge, preventing full automation. My stomach knotted. They had written the narrative before the collapse had even begun. A call from headquarters lit my screen next. It was Conrad Greer. I let it ring until it died. The voicemail that followed was tight and rehearsed. Maren. We are experiencing a temporary disruption. We may need clarification on certain procedures. Please call me temporary. He said it like the system was merely having a bad morning, not bleeding out in real time. More alerts rolled through Boise, shutting down its assembly queue. Pueblo's metal shift overheating. Flagstaff reporting incompatible inputs from 3 facilities. Each message struck with the same brutal clarity. 11 years of precision, thrown aside overnight. And now the pieces were falling exactly where I had known they would. By the time the 10th alert came in, the grid was gone, fractured beyond repair, and no command from Denver could stitch it back together. Conrad Greer called right after noon. I let the phone ring until his name blurred on the screen. But he called again, and again. On the 3rd attempt, I answered. His voice cracked before he finished the first sentence. Maren, thank God. We need your help. The grid is unstable across all 5 states. Celeste's protocols are not compensating. No one can get the timing realigned. I held the phone to my ear without speaking. The silence made him breathe heavier. We made a mistake, he said. Quieter. A serious one. Whatever differences we had, we can address later. Right now, we need you back in Denver. We need you to walk us through recovery. I closed my eyes. The same man who told me the system ran itself was now choking on his own words. A new email banner slid across my screen. From Celeste Harwood, subject request for collaboration. I opened it. Maren, I believe there may have been miscommunication. Your experience is essential. If you could join us temporarily, I will ensure proper acknowledgement. Please let me know how we can proceed. Miscommunication. That was her word for 11 years erased by a midnight text. Conrad kept talking. Just tell us where to start. What should we fix first? I answered slowly. I do not work there anymore. Maren, please. His voice broke entirely. We are past ego. This is survival. Name what you want. We will honor it. Before I could respond, another notification appeared, this one from an unknown address. Federal Coordination Oversight Division inside was a single line. We would like to speak with you regarding the events leading to the system failure. Your insight is critical. Critical. The word hung in the air between all three messages. Conrad spoke again, terrified. Maren, please tell me you are still there. I stayed silent long enough for him to understand that the balance of power had shifted. When I finally ended the call, it was without negotiation. They were the ones falling now, and the consequences were already larger than any of them had imagined. 2 weeks after the collapse, I walked into Aspen Meridian for my first day. The building was smaller, quieter, nothing like the glass and steel command center in Denver. But the difference hit me the moment I stepped into the operations wing. Rowan Beck, the director of system strategy, greeted me with a handshake that did not feel rehearsed. Maren Calloway, he said, we are grateful you chose us. We want to hear everything you know, not the polished version your version. I blinked. You actually want the messy parts. That is where the real intelligence lives, he replied. Show us. It was the first time in years that I felt my shoulders loosen, even slightly. He introduced me to the operations team, 7 engineers, young but sharp-eyed. One of them, Riva Morales, slid a chair toward me. We read your interview notes, she said. If even half of what you described is true, we need to rethink our entire model. I sat down with them, pulling up the diagrams I had rebuilt from memory. As I walked them through the old grid, its strengths, its dangerous blind spots no one dismissed, minimized, or rushed me. Riva pointed to a timing chart. This dip right here. Is this what you said caused the curing mismatch in Wyoming last year? Yes. She glanced at Rowan. Their automation model does not compensate for environmental drift. Rowan exhaled. So the failures were baked in long before the collapse. I nodded. There were vulnerabilities no one wanted to acknowledge. Another engineer, Thomas, tapped his screen. Look at this. Their predictive module has a flaw in the variance thresholds. If this had hit in peak season, they would have lost twice as much. Rowan turned back to me. You tried to warn them. I did, I said quietly. They argued the data was perfect. Data without the person interpreting it is blind, Rowan answered. That is why you are here. For the first time in a long while, I felt something like steadiness take root. Not vindication, something steadier. A place where the mind behind the system was not an inconvenience, but the foundation. The findings were released on a gray Wednesday morning. I was at Aspen Meridian reviewing a timing draft with Riva when my phone vibrated with an alert from the Federal Coordination Oversight Division. She glanced at me. Is that it? I opened the document. Yes. They finalized the report. Rowan joined us, folding his arms as he read over my shoulder. The summary was blunt and merciless. Celeste Harwood falsified readiness data to accelerate implementation. Conrad Greer approved untested automation despite documented concerns. Multiple safety controls were removed to meet quarterly targets. Riva let out a low breath. They put that in writing. They did, I said. A second alert followed. The board at Iron Vale had removed both Conrad and Celeste from their positions effective immediately. Their statements to the press sounded hollow, even in text. Conrad claimed he had trusted the wrong projections. Celeste insisted she had believed in innovation. Neither mentioned the people who lost their jobs or the grid that collapsed under their decisions. Rowan shook his head. Their credit rating just dropped again. Partners are pulling out. Riva tapped another update. 3 major clients dissolved contracts. They are finished. As the news spread, an email arrived from the investigators. request for voluntary expert testimony. They wanted me to walk them through the system as it was before the collapse and explain where it failed afterward. Rowan asked softly. Do you want to do that? I closed the report and set my phone down. I will tell them what happened. Nothing more. Nothing less. Riva studied my face. No anger. There is nothing left to fight, I said. The truth already did the work. Later that afternoon, I sat across from two federal officials in a quiet conference room, speaking plainly about the timing drifts, the missing offsets, the warnings ignored. They wrote everything down. They did not interrupt. When we finished, one of them said, "Thank you, Ms. Calloway. This clarifies more than you know." I nodded, feeling that familiar ache in my chest ease just a little. Truth had its own gravity, and it no longer rested on me alone. The final outcome came quietly, without headlines or dramatic statements. A short notice from the Federal Coordination Oversight Division arrived in my inbox one morning as I prepared to meet Rowan's team. Celeste Harwood and Conrad Greer are barred from holding operational leadership roles for 10 years. I read the line twice. It did not thrill me. It simply landed where it belonged. Rowan stepped into my office. "You saw the update I did." He leaned against the doorway. Their reputations collapsed faster than the grid. I closed the email. They built their careers on certainty. They never considered the cost of being wrong. Rowan nodded slowly. "You gave your testimony with more restraint than I expected. There was no reason to twist the knife." I said, "The truth already did what it needed to do." Later that afternoon, I sat with Riva and Thomas as they finalized the draft of the new coordination model, one built around human judgment supporting automation, not the other way around. The National Manufacturing Alliance had requested a full presentation. Riva turned her chair toward me. "They want you to lead the keynote." I blinked. "Me, you," she said. "You are the one everyone trusts." Rowan joined us, placing a folder in front of me. "They mean it. Maren, companies across 4 states want guidance. They do not want perfect data. They want someone who understands why data fails." I opened the folder slowly. Plans, invitations, and proposals spilled out everything Iron Veil had dismissed me for, now offered as something valuable, something essential. That evening, I stepped out into the hallway, letting the hum of conversation fade behind me. I remembered the night I was fired, the silence after the message, the sense of being cut loose from everything I built. Now the world was asking me to help build something better. When an industry reporter called for a quote, I answered without rehearsing anything. They removed me because they believed the system did not need a human mind. I said, but the collapse proved the opposite. Human judgment is not a flaw. It is the backbone. I ended the call and looked out across the city Fort Collins, glowing steady in the dusk, ready to begin the next chapter on my own terms.